In the previous videos, we have talked about arrays, and today we will look at multi-dimensional arrays and more specifically 2D arrays. So today we will see how 2D arrays work in Java. So let's begin with a little recap. So to declare an array or create an array called X, you have to do something like this. So this is one way. So now this will create an array called X, which will have 5 elements since we have given it a size of 5, and and it will hold 5 values, right? It will hold 5 values from 0th to 4th index, and they will all be 0 initially. Similarly, we can declare it like this. We can also declare the array like this. It will also work. Or we can declare the array like this, and we can give it values instead of giving it a size. So if I give it 5 values, and now as you can see we got an array, and the difference is this, that our first array, let's call it x1, uh, will be an array which will have a size of 5, and all values will be 0 initially, right? But in the second case, we have declared an array. We have not given it a size. And instead of giving it a size, we have initialized it. So now it has 5 values. Our compiler will count these values and it will automatically assign the size to this array. For example, if we print the length of the X array, we can do it like this. So now let's run it, and as you can see, it has a size of 5, or the length a length of 5. So that's what I was saying. So you can initialize it or give it size. We are going to do the same thing with multi-dimensional arrays. So let's create a simple multi-dimensional array, right? So as it can be seen by 2D arrays, it will have 2 dimensions. Here we have only rows. We have only one row, and in multi-dimensional we will have multiple rows and multiple columns, so we won't be limited to rows. So one example of multi-dimensional array is like this. So let's suppose that our values are 1 2 3 4, then we got 5 6 7 8, and then we got 9 10 11 12. So this is an example of multi-dimensional array, or 2D array in this case. So this is a 2D array. So now as you can see, it has 3 rows, and it has 4 columns. So let's remove this to make it more clear. So now as you can see, it has 2 rows and 4 columns. So this is what a multi-dimensional array looks like. So if we go ahead and create it, so how you'll create it? So first we have to write int, and instead of writing one square bracket, we will write uh, 2 square brackets. So that's telling our compiler that we are creating a multi-dimensional array, that is a 2D array. We can also create 3D arrays by putting 3 brackets, but for now let's deal with 2D arrays. So let's call it X, and then we can either use the new keyword and create an array through this, but first let's create an array and initialize it directly instead of giving it size. So now these are our brackets. Initially it is empty, it has no elements, and let's call it x2. So now let's give it values. So now if you look at this, these are all array elements. So this is the 0th row, this is the first row, and if we create another like 0 negative 9 -6 -6 again, now this is another row. So now we have multiple rows, right? So each array element will be a complete array. So this is the core concept, that in case of multi-dimensional array, each array elements, in this case it was a single integer, But here each element will be a complete array, which we also call it a row, a complete row. So now if we create this, so what we will do, we will, instead of passing it element like 1, 3 and so on, we have to pass it a complete array. So now our first element will be this array 1, 2, 3 and 4. So now what we have done, we have created a multi-dimensional array, and it only has one element, only one row. So this is what I was trying to show you. Now let's add another element into it, since we want to add more elements. So let's give them 5, 6, 7 and 8, and let's close the brackets here. So now our array is like this. So it has two rows. So as you can see here, it has two smaller arrays or mini arrays, whatever you want to call it. But the main idea is that you are, instead of having a single element, you are having a whole array, as an element of this multi-dimensional array. So this is how 2D looks like. So this will be our zeroth row. As you know, we count from zero in programming, and this will be our first row, right? And let's see how in the multi-dimensional indexing is different. So suppose you want to access the so now we have two rows, right? This is our zeroth row and this is our first row. Let me move it to the next line so it's more convenient for you to see. So now, as you can see, we have two rows, right? Uh, you can see it here as well. And let's try accessing a complete row first. So what if we want to access a complete row? So to access the complete row, we simply have to write x0. So now this element will have so what this statement is doing, it is assigning the first row. So it is assigning the reference of the first row to the reference of zeroth row. So now we are assigning a complete row, but this is how we access a complete row. That is one complete element, one complete semi array, or one complete inner array of the let's say our multidimensional array, 2D array. What if we want to access only single element, right? Only one element. What we are going to do in that case? So in that case, let's go through it. So if you want to access this element, that is this one here, and which is this one here, the very first element, the very first column of the very first row. So first you have to write the array name, right? Then you have to put two square brackets, and in the first square bracket you write the row number. So we know this is our zeroth row, so we are accessing the zeroth row, right? And we write the row number. Now we are telling that go to the zeroth row of x, and in the next square bracket we put the column number. So our first will be at zeroth, our second value be at 1, our third will be at 2, our 4 will be at 3. So this is just like normal indexing. We are just accessing index. So once you are done with the row part, now we have normal array. Now we have this array, which is our normal array. We have dealt with this before. We can simply give it a value. Like let's give it a value. Let me change it to 0. So let's assign it 11. So right. Now what we are doing, we are accessing the zeroth row, and we are accessing the zeroth element of the zeroth row. Similarly, suppose you want to access the last element of the zeroth row, and in that case, what will happen, our compiler will first check the zeroth row, since we are accessing the zeroth row, which is this row here. As you can see, this is the row here, and it will assign this value, that is 11, to this element, that is the element at the third index. So this is a zeroth, this is first, second, and third. So that's how we look at multidimensional arrays. And let's add one more element into it. So now I'm gonna call it 10, 11, 12, and 13. So now we have a 2D array with three elements. That is three arrays or three rows. So now let's look at this a little differently. So let's check the indexes of each element. So now first we have the zeroth row, right? We have the zeroth row. So our 1 will be stored at 0 and 0. Similarly, if we want to access 2, we know our 2 is stored in the zeroth row. So we first write 0, that is the zeroth row. This is what you will write while accessing, which we are doing earlier. And then we will write 1. So similarly, in the case of 3, 3 is in the zeroth row. So we know it is in the zeroth row. And it is at index 0, 1, and 2. Similarly, 0 and 3, 4 is at 0, 3. So this is the position. So if you want to access 4, what you will do is you will write x 0, that is the 0th row, and then you will write 3. I am basically telling you how to access. So similarly, in this case, the row number will change. That is, row will become 1, and our columns will stay the same. Since our row number is 1, our column first 5 will be stored at the 0th index. Similarly, 6 will be stored at the first index, and similarly, uh, 7 will be stored at the second index, and 8 will be stored at the third index. Similarly, here, now we are accessing the second row, the row at the index 2. Since we count from 0, this is at uh, position 2 or index second. So this is our second row if we count from 0. And now to access its first element, that is 10, we simply have to write 2, that is row number, and then column number, that is 0. Similarly, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 3. So now we got our array. So as you can see, you can if you focus, you can see a pattern here. So what is the pattern? The pattern is that, as you can see, our columns are staying the same. So they go from 0 to 3, since there are 4 elements in each row. And similarly here, they go from 0 to 3. But in each case, our row number is changing. So for each row, but this should make sense, right? This is how we create arrays. So now let me show you one more thing. Uh, I want to make sure that you get this idea. This idea is very important. The thinking, the design of this really matters. And if you got this, good for you. And remember that first, to access any element, we write 0. That is we write the row number first. This is the 0th row. This is the 0th row. This is the first row. And this is the second row. And for now, uh, each row will have equal number of elements. So the number of elements in each row will be equal. We can have different number of elements as well, but we won't go into that for now. For now, you should know that the number of elements in each row must be equal. So now let's create the same array in a different way. So now let's call it x3. So now instead of initializing it, let's pass the size to it. So we are gonna do the same thing, but here we will make a change. So instead of putting one square bracket, we will put two square brackets. Okay, so you're wondering what we should put in these brackets. So in the first bracket, we will put the uh, size. We will put the size of array, that is the number of rows. So recall that in each case, the the number of elements, in each case, each element is an array. So the total size will be 1, 2, 3. That is 3. If you want to insert 3 rows, you will put 3 here. So in the first block, you put the number of rows. Since each element is this point is very important. Each element is an array, complete array in 2D array. That's 5. And in the next row, you put the number of columns, that is the number of elements each uh, array will have, each element will have. So here, as you can see, we have 4 elements in each row. So I'm gonna put 4 here. Now to give assign elements. Suppose for now we got this array, but all values are 0, 0, 0. So we have 12, 0 here. So suppose we want to assign 1 to the very first element. What we will do, you will write the array name, then you will write the row number we want to store at the 0th row, and then you will write the index, that is the 0th index, and we will simply store 1 here. I think there is one more thing which can be done. Let's try it. x30 equals 1, 2, 3, 4. This should work, but I'm not sure. So it doesn't work here, but that will work later on. We will see about it. But for now, this is how you assign values. Similarly, if you want to assign the value to the last index, you simply have to write x3 row number, that is 3, and then we have to write the index number, which is 3 as well. We can give it any value, like let's give it 44. So now we are going our 2 arrays. For now, it has only 2 elements. You can fill up the rest. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching.